Hello, I'm back. I guess this is the third episode of Give Me the Anecdote. Still feels weird saying that, but I guess I should actually say the name of this if I'm going to have a name. So, wanted to go ahead and put out another episode, and this time, something different as well from the first two. So, again, we're kind of, getting a good idea from these early episodes of really everything that I want to do with this podcast. So, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was about the Supreme Court's impending decision, the draft that came out about the abortion law, the Mississippi abortion law that the Supreme Court has taken up, and the draft that came out about it, and wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I wanted to do it in a unemotional way and also a thoughtful way, and a way that tries to be as unopinionated as possible, at least, or at least differentiate between opinion and differentiate between, like, we're just talking about facts and trying to be fair to both sides. Because, I mean, the bottom line with this issue is that it is really divisive and people get really emotional about it. And it's been an ongoing debate for forever, as long as I can remember. It's been, the same debate about it for a long, long time. And people are passionate and people care a lot. And I think it's important to remember that people care on both sides, and not to be dismissive, because I think in the end, like nobody wants human life to go away, to die. Like, nobody wants that in a perfect world, right? Like, I think we all agree on that the loss of human life is a tragedy. So, I think I would like for us to maybe like focus on some of the areas that we agree with more than disagree with, and also just try to be fair on both sides. And so to that point, I want to say a little bit more about maybe what else I would like to do on this. So this is just going to be the first part of it, because I wanted to just establish the groundwork for what I wanted to talk about, and just give some background on what's happening in case anybody out there is like me and was really wanting to try to get informed, and this was a good excuse to do that. So if I can try to share that with you, and maybe share some things that you didn't consider, didn't know about, at least initially, and then I'll talk about what I'd like to do maybe subsequently after that in other episodes. So for this one, I wanted to go ahead and start with the history of things. So I just kind of was reading up and making notes as I was sitting here watching sports. Go teams. Had introduced what I wanted to talk about. Excuse me, this lighting in here is maybe it messed me up a little bit, and I want to make sure that I'm near the microphone and can be heard. So yeah, I mean, so I had a friend that I have reached out to that I want to maybe help me with some of this, and she sent me an article, I think a couple articles, but one that I really focused on was she sent me like the Wikipedia page on the history of abortion. So I just kind of wanted to maybe like start there. Really, I did not plan it originally, but maybe just kind of go linearly a little bit to like how we got to this point. If maybe that history might help a little bit. I don't know. I found some things in here like really interesting as I was educating myself. So yeah, it's like pretty much ever since human civilization has started recorded history, there has been recordings of abortion. I think the earliest that I've read that they found was on papyrus in Egypt in 1550 BC. So, from that early, there was like, I don't know exactly what it was, but apparently it's indicating an induced abortion. It's, been happening for a long time, and some of the stuff that I read about, early on, kind of what women would do to get an abortion was they would recommend strenuous labor, which that makes sense because I remember like as a kid being told oh, pregnant women that can't do a lot of work, they might hurt the baby. So I guess that's been around for a long time. So people used to do bloodletting, the girdle tightening, lying on a heated coconut shell, my personal favorite. And then as we increased in our knowledge and everything, the Greeks started using it as medicinal drinks, and eventually they kind of turned into potions. These medicinal drinks throughout time and throughout history, it kind of comes down, and we get to like kind of the more modern times, and you're getting all those tonics and everything from the traveling salesman, like we always see in like the cartoons and stuff. So even then, there was stuff being sold for abortion, and there was a lot of like kind of mass marketing behind it. But to that point, there was a lot of different disagreements and controversies. I mean, basically from the beginning. I mean, nobody's really been able to agree on it. A lot of it comes down to some of our cultures. Some of it also is really strongly tied to religion as well. Obviously, pretty much religions all over the world have kind of addressed it. Even talking about some Bible verses that talk about what to be done if a baby dies, which so, the religious part of it has been very influential in that as well. And then, if people have come to educate themselves more throughout the years about the human body and everything, then people have developed, more sophisticated arguments on both sides of that. So, but it has been, but it's not been something that has been agreed on, from the very beginning. So, there's artwork in early history. Aristotle addressed it. Like I said, the Bible and Judaism, which I thought it was interesting. When it talked about Judaism, it just said that kind of differing from most Christians or evangelicals, I guess I would say, is that they view it as more of a societal issue than a theological one, and that it just prioritized women's life in that situation. So I guess they left it more up to societal issues. So anyway, I'd never heard that before. I thought that was interesting because I would have assumed that they felt the same as evangelicals. And then a lot of the stuff that has been argued over the years is, like I said, as the arguments got more sophisticated, they started talking about, limiting abortion in certain ways because, for throughout history, abortions were some places legal, in some places it was illegal, in some places, well, it's legal in these situations, and basically some places it's like the only time you can get an abortion is if the mother's going to die. So it's just all that's kind of differed throughout the years, and kind of arguments that you could see being made on both sides. But then after that, you started getting into people were talking about okay, abortion and as a result to when the quickening happening. Quickening happens, not the quickening happening. When the quickening happens, and I had to look up what the quickening was, and I guess it was described as that's when a woman starts feeling the first kick, is the easiest way to describe it. So they would, argue over like, okay, is abortion, can that be done before then or after then? And so that was an argument. And then also viability, as far as can the baby survive inside of the womb or not outside the womb? When can it survive inside the womb? And, arguments over when that actually is, and science saying one thing and then saying another later, or one side saying this or that. So, and then the term, how long it stays in the body, or the trimesters. Have to forgive me. I'm never been a pregnant woman, so I'm probably not going to get a lot of the verbiage right. Not that I have to be a pregnant woman to get that right, but bear with me. I'm an ignorant man trying to educate myself is maybe the better way to say it, not in a condescending way. So the term, the trimesters, that's been argued over, for a long time as well. So kind of those are the things that we still kind of argue over nowadays. Maybe not necessarily the quickening part of it, but kind of similar. And then so and I thought it was interesting. Susan B. Anthony, she was pro-life, and so she had written about it in a paper. It sounded like it was a pseudonym that she wrote. And then you started seeing more pro-choice movements in the 1920s and 30s. When women were getting their rights to vote and everything like that was happening as well. So that's when it started moving along. And then you start to get into 1970s. It's really the end of the 60s, 70s when you get to Roe versus Wade, right? So you get all the way there. So at that point, we've been arguing about abortion and everything. In some states, it's legal. Some states, it's not. And in the state of Texas, it was illegal. And there was some of this I may read a little bit on. But it was Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey. They were litigators and or at least lawyers, and they were seeking to be able to overturn the Texas law, to challenge the Texas law of not being able to get an abortion. And basically, reading about this was interesting because it's always fascinating to me how like the law works and how lawyers work and judges work and things like that, and like how there's this whole system and the manipulation. I don't know if manipulating is the right way, but knowing the system and knowing how to work the system. To me, whenever I read about stuff like this, I always have like this conflict in me over like, whether or not that's above board and whether or not that's good or whether they're being sneaky and you know what I'm saying, like just dirty behind the, like there's a question to me of whether it's, hey, this is just, I know what the system, how it operates, and I know how to do things. Again, I try not to use the word manipulate. I know how to do things to move the process along to get a desired result. And then the other side of that line is kind of like the just, well, we're just going to lie, cheat, and steal to just, get our way and get something passed through. So that's probably why I'm not a lawyer, because I have a hard time seeing that line sometimes when I read stuff like this. I mean, because, and I've heard interviews with lawyers and other podcasts, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, if you want to move stuff along, okay, so if I'm kind of talking non-specifically here. So if I can just talk about a specific example, it was like they were wanting to challenge the law, but it was basically like, well, we can just find any pregnant woman that wants to get an abortion and just put her name on it, and we'll push forward with this. And so, and they gave her a pseudonym. Her name was Norma McCorvey, but they used the name Roe in it. And Wade was the, I guess, the district attorney that they were challenging the law for. So that's what that was. And so I just found it interesting because it just talked about some stuff that they did to find her. And then it was talking about, we want to present it towards one judge, but then we found another woman that'll go before this judge. And we're hoping to get one of these that will be, pro-choice. And if they are, then we're going to ask to combine the cases. So maybe that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Like when I first read that, I was like, well, that seems real shady. But then I've kind of realized that, sometimes that's just how the system works. Like we're just trying to increase our odds to get the ruling that we want, because it's a hard system to go through and it takes years, because this process actually started in 1969 and then Roe versus Wade wasn't decided until 73. And I'm sure this Mississippi law that's, up there at the court right now, I'm sure it's probably been around a while too. So I haven't done all my research on that. But anyway, just to be fair on that, I thought it was interesting to talk about that. So if I can maybe just do a little bit of reading here. So the actual ruling on what happened with Roe versus Wade. So the Supreme Court issued a 7-2 decision in McCorvey's favor, ruling that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides a right to policy that protects a pregnant woman's right to choose whether to have an abortion. So that's read from the internet. But basically what I understood from that was the 14th Amendment was used as not only the right to privacy, but also as a way of saying that if things were constitutional or not, are based in the Constitution. Okay, and so I kind of went back and was looking that up, the 14th Amendment. The 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments were basically made together. And, forgive any history buffs out there. I learned this stuff in school, but I didn't retain a whole lot of it, especially when it regards to the Constitution and the amendments. I was not good at memorizing. I was good at memorizing some things in history, but that was not one of them. So educating myself. 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments were made after the Civil War, and they were basically designed to, enact the freedoms of the slaves who had previously, under the Constitution, not protected by the Constitution, so they didn't have freedom. So these amendments were having to be made to make sure that they were indeed protected under government law, right? And so the way that it put it was, if the 15th Amendment formally abolishes slavery, and the 15th Amendment gave African American men the opportunity to be heard in the public body through the ballot voting, then the 14th Amendment was about imbuing these newly freed persons with the basic rights that whites had come to expect and that had been systematically denied enslaved people. So I thought that was interesting, the breakdown of those three amendments and kind of how they were meant to be hand in hand. So the idea of this article was like the 14th Amendment was not necessarily designed to be used the way that it has. Not that it's being used improperly necessarily right now or anything. It's just that it was initially designed to give people, black people, or newly freed slaves, the basic rights that they deserved, right? So, in that includes the right to family integrity, to not have your children or your spouse stolen or sold away from you, the right to raise your children, to marry whom you want, and of course, the right to own your body. So that's kind of where that got into, is like, I'm the owner of my own body. with that. And so that what they argued in Roe versus Wade was that is saying that the government has no right in saying what's being done to your body. And so again, the age-old debate there is that people are talking about the child. So they're not talking about what's being done to your body. They're talking about a human being there, right? So that's where the conflict has arisen. If I can like really break that down into very simple terms, right? I'd copied a little bit here. I'll just, it also ruled that this right is not absolute and must be balanced against government's interest in protecting women's health and prenatal life. The court resolved this balancing test by tying state regulation of abortion to the 3 trimesters of pregnancy. So, like the 3 trimesters. So the first trimester, it was like you could not prohibit abortions at all. The second one, the states could like regulate it and according to health regulations. And then the third was abortions were prohibited in the 3rd trimester. But as I kept reading, I noticed that it said that it was like that was the trimester part was overturned in 1992. So like basically 20 years later, they overturned that or threw that out. The court classified the right to choose to have an abortion as fundamental, which required courts to evaluate challenged abortion laws under the strict scrutiny standard, the highest level of judicial blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's to kind of give you an idea of what Roe versus Wade said. And obviously we knew all the controversies. And again, a lot of the controversies that we deal with now dealt with for pretty much since abortion's been around. And again, I want to point out that that's not this. I'm not in that statement saying which side is right or wrong on that. I think that both sides deeply care and want to do the right thing. And so it's been, very passionate arguments that we've had. And so we've kind of gone back and forth on that. And with conservatives trying to enact, pro-life laws, and obviously the Democratic side enforcing pro-choice laws. And so that's kind of been going back and forth, and I'd always kind of wondered why it hasn't been trying to be taken to the courts, but it seems like people were doing that. They were trying to use the system the way that we've designed it to work to bring about a change that they thought was needed to be made. And so what we're facing nowadays is that Justice Alito, I hope I'm saying the name right, he is the one writing the draft or where this leaked draft came through, and I know that there's maybe some controversy on this draft being leaked that I think both sides feel. So that's one thing I want to talk about too, but probably not tonight. But just trying to state facts tonight. So based on this, I don't want to. I'm not really good at going too far into it, but let me try to see if I can find one of these articles. And I'm gonna like link all this stuff on my Facebook thing. So if you want to see like all these places that I was referencing and finding stuff, I'm gonna link it on under the podcast. So just be aware. So yeah, I thought this one really helped talk about it. So it boils down to 2 propositions. First, the Constitution is silent on the question of abortion, meaning that states can allow it, regulate it, or ban it. Second, Roe was so poorly reasoned, divisive, or divisive, and unworkable that it does not deserve the respect usually owed to precedents. So I thought that was really good, like, just breaking it down to what he's essentially saying. So it does like go into this article, and I'm not going to go into it, but if you want to read it, all of his points that it says in the draft and like his arguments on why he felt like Roe versus Wade was a poorly argued thing and was very weak, from what I understand reading this. Didn't think it was well written and thought basically that the notion of it was based in a falsehood. I don't know if I'm saying that well, but that's kind of what I understood that he's saying. It is very important to, point out that, Justice Alito does talk about the Constitution and does talk about the 14th Amendment in it, which protects liberty, has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution. But he wrote that those implicit rights must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. Abortion, he wrote, is not such a right. Indeed, Justice Alito wrote, when the 14th Amendment was adopted, 3/4 of the state made abortion a crime at all stages of pregnancy. So I think that was one of the biggest points to me was him talking about the deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. So I think that's sticking point of a lot of people. The way it was described to me, that was kind of a sticking point with me, which we'll get into later. But I wanted to make sure that I pointed out that because that seems like a really big thing that he's saying here. And it is critical to note, too, that he did go on, and I told you I wasn't going to read a whole lot of what he said, but here I am. I don't know if I can find it. Let's see. Oh yeah, so he did say to ensure that our decision is not misunderstood or mischaracterized. We emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right. He wrote. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. So I think that's meant to address that the concerns of people like me and others have that, could set a precedent to something else. Again, I'm not going to go into it any more than that, just kind of setting up that's, he did address that in his statement too. So I'll link that. And so, I don't know, I wanted to just give a little bit of an overview on that and, maybe try to simplify it and put it in little bite-sized chunks because I feel like that's helpful for me because, when you're just reading and reading and reading or listening to a radio show that's an hour long and they're just pumping information to you, sometimes it can be hard to process it all. So, and especially when it's like on a timeline, I'm still trying to learn more on that timeline or like how things have gone, but I at least wanted to kind of give just a little simple history on that. So I hope that was helpful. So at this point, I want to say what I want to do for the next part of this. And that is I would like to get either one or two episodes or however many we can do it. I'd like to get the opinion on both sides. I'd like to get an expert to come in and tell me about your side, whether it's pro-choice or pro-life. I've already asked one person, and we've been trying to make it happen. And for one reason or another, we've had one thing, or she's had one thing, and we just couldn't make it happen. So I wanted to go ahead and start this with tonight, but tonight actually might work out better because I did want to go ahead and get also somebody with a pro-life point of view. So she's going to be looking at it from the pro-choice point of view, but she also is very fair on that as well. Anyway, I'll let her explain herself, but just know that that sometimes there's a connotation with a pro-choice, but I don't know if she would just describe herself that way. But anyway, I don't want to put words in her mouth is what I'm trying to say. But I wanted her to kind of talk about that side. And if there's somebody out there that's really knowledgeable and really passionate and really would like to speak with me, whether through Zoom or face-to-face, on the phone, whatever is easiest. It doesn't have to be long, but just whatever you feel comfortable doing. And whatever you are knowledgeable in discussing, it's okay, however much or little you know. I told my friend, I was like, you don't have to be Nina Totenberg, who Nina Totenberg is the NPR Supreme Court expert that they're always going to. So anytime they have questions about the Supreme Court, they call Nina. And so I was like, you don't have to be her. Just, just whatever you do know, we'll talk about. And anything that we don't, we'll just kind of try to discuss it. And, so, just feel that way. And we can edit things too. So you don't have to feel like it has to be perfect on the first try. If we mess up something, we can stop and fix it and edit it later. So just trying to say that to say, don't let those things discourage you. If you really are passionate about this, if you really want to educate people on your perspective, I'll take as many as I can get. I mean, I don't want to. We'll have to, just depending on when, we'll have to discuss, how much content we put out there as far as that goes. But I'll take as many people as I can get. But I've already asked one and love to get the other, and we can put it in the same episode if possible. And no, it wouldn't be talking at the same time, okay? I am not doing debate podcast here, okay, at all. All right, that is not what that is. I've told you a lot of things that this podcast is going to be, but one thing it's not going to be is a scream at each other podcast. Okay, I can't stand that on TV, and it gets on my nerves on the radio when it's not done with a sense of humor. And so I'm not here to do that. So we'll have one person or one side, and if there's multiple people on that one side, we'll talk about that. And on the other side, we'll talk about that. And I want to be fair to both sides. I want to emphasize that. I do have my own opinions. And at the very end, I will say my opinions on this. But I want to be fair, and I want to educate myself because I've already learned a lot. I felt like on both sides to understand both sides, and I feel like there's a lot more to learn. So I do want to be fair. So I'm really trying not to inject a lot of opinion, and where opinion is put, we will be very distinct about that and be like, okay, what is your opinion here? Now is the part where we're going to talk about how we feel about this or what you think could happen because of it, and the conjecture part of it. Okay, we're going to separate out conjecture and facts. Okay, so anyway, I hope that's helpful, and I want to quit rambling now because I have a tendency to do that. So I will try to get this out as soon as possible, and I hope that this all came through because if it didn't, I'm going to be sad. And everybody have a good night. All right, bye-bye.